This might be that crazy part of the season where Barcelona are going for trophies and playing every 3 days. It actually felt like for most of the season, because they're in all competitions, they were playing every 3 to 4 days, but you get the point. Still, amidst all the matches, we still have to make time for news. That means we've got another top 5 news of the week segment, because welcome to episode 678 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and before we get started, I want to remind everybody I will be available for the second half, not the first half, but the second half on the watch long on bigup.com/the Barcelona pod for the second half of the matchup against Leganes. That's the watch along again on Big Up. And then I will also obviously have the watch along midweek against Borussia Dortmund, as well as a hate watch of Real Madrid against Arsenal on Wednesday. So there is a lot going on this week in Barcelona world. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, give a like on the podcast apps, follow me anywhere on social media so you don't miss anything. I've also been making more social media content on Instagram and TikTok, so you can find me also on social media. All right, let's get into the top 5 news of the week. Our first piece of news is about Flick's contract talk. When you're a manager for Barcelona who's doing as well as he is, now we do know that the normal manager cycle seems to be 3 years. But if you're in your first year, the way that Hansi Flick is, right now he is on pace to win some trophies that will equal Barcelona wanting him to stick around. And that seems to be the case as well, as preliminary talks seem to have begun. His agent, Pini Zahavi, met with the Barcelona directors this week, but instead of talking Lewandowski, which is what the conversation could have been about, instead, maybe they did talk a little Lewandowski over some appetizers, sure, but the main course was reportedly mainly talking about Flick. His contract is set to expire by 2026, but by the end of the season, the club may be looking to extend that for another season until 2027 or beyond. The meeting was merely a, quote, declaration of intent, but clearly they want to make it happen as long as Flick does. 2 things to note as well as they begin these preliminary talks. Winning trophies is definitely going to help the Barcelona manager and his negotiating power get a bigger number. And secondly, remember that the coach's contract does have to factor into financial fair play. So because Barcelona was not able to go back into the Camp Nou, they still don't know what the Champions League money is going to look like when all is said and done and all that dust settles. So they're going to have to figure out how to fit his contract in. And maybe this winds up not getting done till the end of the season. But if he does win all those trophies, Barcelona know that they won't be able to get him at this, hey, you only won the Spanish Super Cup discount. Our second piece of news is Dani Olmo on-field and off-field news. There are some Kool-Aids that are kind of throwing out the idea that Dani Olmo is going to be able to contribute because of his injuries on and off again. I mean, this is kind of the player that we knew that he was signing up to be. Maybe he will have a Pedri resurgence over the offseason when the physios and the club can really look at him and put him on a good plan. Sure, but for now, this is who Dani Olmo is. Who he is currently is a player that is injured but regaining his fitness in training, as he did return to training yesterday. The club could still sit him out for a few more weeks to help him get back to full fitness. He won't be back for Leganes on the weekend and likely won't be back for next week's Dortmund second leg either, since the team may not need him, being up 4-0 and all, which is a good place to be. Obviously, being able to feel like you don't have to rush players back when you feel like, hey, if he's not 100%, we could just have Pablo Torre even play or start if needed, but likely it'll be Gavi or Fermin Lopez. I don't know actually what Hansi Flick is going to do, but the manager has earned my trust after going up 4-0 in that tie. As far as Dani Olmo and Pau Victor actually being allowed to play and being registered, that is all going Barcelona's way. And you really don't know. I think the team will truly need Dani Olmo throughout the remainder of this season in the games where it matters most. And as I said, fortunately, the club still has Pau Victor and Olmo registered after the Liga's latest appeal was rejected by the CSD. I know this is a very boring sentence, but the administrative court denying the Liga's request to suspend the CSD's decision, which is that the Liga's appeal was rejected and that Pau Victor and Olmo could continue to remain registered. So I know it's a lot of negatives, a lot of rejections and appeals and all those things, but a triple negative for the courts and all that stuff and the Liga and Javier Tebas, well, it ends in a positive for Barcelona. Our third piece of news is catching up for our Champions League rivals. Now, if you were just watching Barcelona, even if you were just watching Barcelona, I assume that you also had at least some kind of an idea of what happened in Real Madrid against Arsenal when Declan Rice hit those 2 free kicks. Mikel Moreno gets one late, and Real Madrid find themselves down 3-0 in their tie. They also lost Camavinga to a yellow for the second leg, and then he winds up getting a red card late in the match for good measure. Real Madrid, of course, they're going to need a bunch of goals at home, and yet, I'm not counting them out in the least. So I know Arsenal's up 3-0, And to me, going back to the Santiago Bernabeu, it feels like that one is just 0-0, the way it is with Real Madrid in the Champions League. But I will say they have not looked like their regular Real Madrid all-conquering force throughout this season. So just maybe we have to believe that the team that did skate by in the group phase, it's not like they were top 8. They might be who we think they are in Europe, while Arsenal, who did finish top 8, are also who we think they are. The winner of that tie will then face the winner of the PSG versus Aston Villa tie. And right now, PSG are in the driver's seat. They have taken the advantage. They were at home as well, but they got 2 superb individual goals to go up 3-1 in that tie through Doué and Kvara. Both scored wonder goals. And while Aston Villa did show some fight in the first half, the second half was all PSG, and some of the numbers were really impressive to back that up. 9 corners, 94% passing accuracy, 841 passes, 29 total shots, domination from PSG. And I do get that that's what Aston Villa wanted to do. They did get the opening goal through Morgan Rogers through a counterattack, but maybe they gave PSG just a few too many chances. And if anything, the silver lining would feel with all those stats, they might feel like being Aston Villa, that they survived a second half that really could have gotten a lot worse, even though they allowed a stoppage time goal. They would need a bunch, I will say, to go their way to get a possible result back home on Tuesday. But hey, crazier things have happened. And I think, let's just say this as Kool-Aid's, PSG, maybe you've earned the right to be the favorites. You never want to be the tippy top favorites. So PSG, I feel like they're the favorites right now after that first leg. And finally, if Barcelona do get by Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday, they will face the winner of Bayern Munich against Inter Milan, where Inter Milan does have the slight advantage, 2-1, having got the 2-1 result on the road in Germany. Mathematically, it is the closest tie, though, but that was also the most even match to watch. Lautaro Martinez scored the opener. Then the soon-to-be-retired Thomas Muller maybe scored the last big goal of his career in the 85th minute, but that was answered by the 88th minute winner from Davide Frattesi. Inter Milan is really interesting because they're so adept at really getting into their shell. And I know you don't usually say it that way, but yeah, they get into their shell better than most teams in world football. And then they find multiple ways out of their shell. So it's not just some direct line of counterattacking. They're also able to build up after they've gotten out of their shell. I've been talking tactics about how Barcelona is an underrated counterattacking team for quite a few weeks now, but don't get it twisted. Simone Inzaghi, Inter's manager, he knows how to counterattack. There is nothing underrated about that part of Inter's game. They really hit you on a break in ways that other teams around the world don't. If they are the team that moves on, that would be a really interesting tie. I think Barcelona against Inter Milan with a bit of history as well. Maybe not as much as the Bayern Munich history and those demons, but yeah, Inter Milan against Barcelona, still a ton of history. But before I say that Inter Milan is going to be there, it's hard to preview that. Hey, Inter has to get there, but so does Barcelona against Dortmund. Our fourth piece of news is really putting up numbers. Now, I don't think really or Rafinha, Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, I don't really know if that's going to catch on, but I am putting it out into the universe about really. And then I get to say, really? We're scoring this many goals? It feels good to be able to say that. But that acronym probably won't catch on the way that MSN did with Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. But the current Barca attacking trident is starting to make some numerical parallels. The current trio has 82 goals between them while playing together, but it is nearing the 100 that was scored by Messi, Eto'o, and Henry, and the 98 of Messi, David Villa, and Pedro. But they are still a ways off of MSN. You get that feeling. In 15-16, they scored 131 goals, that being MSN, together after winning the treble. In 14-15, when they scored 122. Then in 16-17, they still scored 110, which was the worst of their outputs, which is still just an absurd number. But 82 this season still is a pretty good mark in Barcelona history, even when they're doing some winning. They will end considerably ahead of the 75 that Eto'o, Ronaldinho, and Henrik Larsson scored in 05-06 in that second Champions League campaign. And that's also more than the 68 if you swap out the sub Larsson for the actual start of that season in Ludovic Gulli. That said, in context across Europe, Barcelona's trident has been the most potent across the front threes in world football. Again, they have 82. Bayern's Kane, Musiala, and Olise are second at 65. PSG's top three and Real Madrid's front three both are at 64. Liverpool's at 62, and Atletico Madrid's top three are at 55. So Barcelona, goal-scoring-wise, are just head and shoulders above the pack, not just in Europe, but in domestic campaigns and all campaigns. Lewandowski, by the way, is also now the first player to score more than 10 goals in the Champions League with 3 different clubs. Don't know what that says about his legacy, but yeah, he did it for Borussia Dortmund, he did it for Bayern Munich, and now he does it for Barcelona as well. And it comes at a pretty great time. If Barcelona are going to win the Champions League, that means that Rafinha or Lewandowski, in terms of their goal scoring, they're likely going to make some history in this run. And then our fifth piece of news this week, ter Stegen talks, Szczesny plays. Yeah, a bit unfortunate for the captain in ter Stegen. He had a lot to say this week, but I also don't really care too much about it, if that makes any sense. I know others have made a big deal about the stuff he said about Messi and how they weren't the best of friends, but I don't think that's definitely new news. I think we already knew that. There were whispers about it, but I guess it's interesting that ter Stegen kind of came out and confirmed it and basically said, hey, if Messi wants to throw a ball at somebody's head, he gets away with it. Messi kind of gets away with everything. I guess that seems to be what ter Stegen took exception to, that Messi did get special treatment. But hey, that's what's going to happen. I also understand the German mentality of equality and everybody kind of having to do their job in full the way they are. I also want to remind you, too, that these are professional athletes. They all don't have to be the best of friends, but they're more like coworkers. They just have to be good teammates to each other. And nothing indicates that those two, even without being the best of friends, did have something that affected the actual team. He also did talk about that being ter Stegen, how he wants to play and get back to being the starter for Germany in the summer. And that means he wants to play for Barcelona again this year. But again, that's not really news. Of course, everybody wants to play. And because a player gets a microphone in front of their face, they get to say that they want to play. Everybody's going to say that. He is the captain as well. So if Flick does choose him for some reason, it's him. But I really don't think that he's going to do that. We've trusted Flick up to this point. And while I would trust him, yeah, it would be an interesting decision to change course from Szczesny. But again, if he did, he probably does it for good reason down the stretch here. I don't expect it, but yeah, I don't mind the fact that ter Stegen had things to say. I know that a lot of people hate him, want him out of the club, but again, this is a kumbaya season. I don't even think his words really upset everybody or are going to mess with the balance of anything. Same thing with Laporta, talking about the appeal for Olmo and Paul Victor. Maybe Tebas was trying to unsettle Barcelona a little bit, but all that happens off the field. Clearly, this team on the field under Hansi Flick is not bothered by anything at all. And as I said, I don't know why he would change from Szczesny at this point, because that being Szczesny, is on the verge of some pretty cool Barca history at this point. He's now tied with Albert Saletas in the 95-96 season with a 21 unbeaten match streak. He's 2 shy of Johan Cruyff in 73-74, 4 shy of Paulinho from the 17-18 season, and still 9 short of Cesc Fabregas in the 2011-12 season. Boy, were those fun seasons. It's not really an individual statistic, actually, because we remember this team in totality going unbeaten the way they are. But it does feel like a bit more rewarding for a goalkeeper to do it because he is the last line of defense and he's expected to be the starter and play 90 minutes in every match. So I don't know. It does feel like Szczesny can take a little more credit than some of the other players on that list. Well, maybe not Cruyff. Cruyff arrived and Barcelona, who did a decade and a half of losing up to that point, just started winning. So Cruyff, hey, he gets that record. Fabregas, hey, he just kind of joined something that was already doing pretty well. Not so surprising that those teams back in 2011, 2012 went unbeaten the way they did. But anyway, history for Szczesny. And hopefully some history upcoming for Barcelona this season under Hansi Flick. As I said, I have plenty going on. The watch-alongs, the match reviews, as in the 5 headlines on the YouTube channel and the podcast apps. We had the Peñapalooza event last week. Just a lot going on in the Barcelona podcast universe. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow along on social media wherever you can find me, and become a member for free, a community member for free on Big Up, just to get in the chat with me and talk while the games go on. That's a big help as well. And as I said, we can have some fun, both good games and some hate watches with Real Madrid against Arsenal on Wednesday as well. All right, that's it. News for the week. I will see you tomorrow against Leganés already. That's how quickly all things happen this season for Barcelona when you're in all the competitions. And until next time, Forza Barca.